Have you ever felt a sudden chill in the room, heard a familiar voice in your dreams, or sensed a loved one's presence long after they were gone? You're not alone. Millions of people across the world report moments like these, moments that science once dismissed as coincidence, imagination, or grief playing tricks on the mind. But here's the twist. New research is finally beginning to uncover that there may be more truth behind these experiences than we ever realized. In this video, we're diving into fascinating new findings on after-death communication. You'll discover why so many people share these encounters, how they impact healing, and why researchers are now paying serious attention. We'll go beyond the ordinary stories and explore the hidden side, like how these experiences often reshape belief systems, open doors to emotional recovery, and in some cases appear when grief isn't even present. What you learn here isn't just about mystery, it's about meaning. It's about understanding why these moments bring comfort to some, fear to others, and curiosity to nearly everyone. And most importantly, it's about realizing that these experiences are not rare whispers in the dark. They're part of the human story. So stay with me until the very end, because the revelations ahead may just change how you look at life, death, and everything in between. What you're about to hear could surprise you, challenge you, and maybe even comfort you in ways you didn't expect. It often begins with a simple question in the heart. Was that real, or was it just my imagination? After-death communication, or ADC, is the name given to these mysterious moments when people feel they've connected with someone who has passed away. It doesn't always happen in dramatic ways. Sometimes it's as subtle as a scent that suddenly fills the room, reminding you of a loved one. Other times it's a vivid dream that feels more like a visit than a memory. Some describe hearing a voice, seeing a figure, or feeling a gentle touch that cannot be explained. ADC is at its core the experience of sensing contact with someone who is no longer physically here. What makes this so fascinating is how widespread these experiences truly are. Studies show that a surprisingly large number of people report having them at some point in their lives. In fact, research suggests that nearly 1 in 2 people may encounter an ADC. Think about that for a moment. Almost half of us carry a story, perhaps kept quietly inside, of feeling the presence of someone who has passed. That means if you've ever felt something like this, you are far from alone. It's more common than most people realize. Yet, because society often brushes these experiences aside, many choose to stay silent. We live in a world that praises logic and reason. And when something doesn't fit neatly into science, people hesitate to speak about it. They don't want to be judged or told they're imagining things. But silence doesn't erase the truth of how deeply these moments are felt. For many, the memory of an ADC is as real and unforgettable as any conversation they ever had in life. And it's not limited to a particular culture or belief system. These stories appear across continents, languages, and traditions. From the elderly grandmother who dreams of her late husband every night, to the child who insists they saw their parents standing by the door after the funeral. ADC experiences don't belong to one group of people. They belong to humanity itself. This universality is part of what makes the research so powerful. When millions of people across the world from different walks of life describe something similar, we have to pause and pay attention. Some experiences are tender and comforting. A grieving person may suddenly hear the favorite song of their loved one on the radio at the exact moment they were thinking about them. Others describe a flash of light, a whisper of words they needed to hear, or even an object moving in a way that feels purposeful. These moments often arrive when someone is searching for peace, reminding them that love is not cut off by death. On the other hand, some ADCs are completely unexpected. People who weren't actively grieving sometimes report them too. Imagine walking through your daily routine and suddenly feeling the unmistakable sense that someone long gone is beside you. These stories show that ADCs aren't only tied to mourning, they can happen at any time to anyone. The question then becomes, why are they so common? Perhaps because grief and love carve deep spaces in our hearts, or perhaps because human connection doesn't end when life does. Whatever the reason, the sheer number of people who have experienced ADCs forces us to take a second look. This isn't just rare or unusual. It's almost ordinary in its frequency, even though each story carries extraordinary meaning for the person who experiences it. When we talk about ADCs, we're not diving into fantasy. We're talking about real moments that leave lasting impact. We're talking about experiences that shape how people heal, how they believe, and how they carry love forward after loss. And when nearly half of the population reports these moments, it's clear what was once seen as unusual is actually part of the fabric of human life. So the next time you hear someone share a story like this, or maybe remember one of your own, pause before brushing it off. These experiences are not as rare as you may think. In fact, they may be one of the most common hidden experiences people carry silently in their hearts. They whisper a message across cultures and across time that love in some mysterious way does not end. It often begins in the quiet of the night when the mind finally slows down and a dream feels far too vivid to ignore. Many people describe dreaming of their loved ones with such clarity that it feels less like imagination and more like a real meeting. In these dreams, the person often looks healthy, peaceful, and full of life. Sometimes they speak words of comfort, sometimes they just smile, but the impact is unforgettable. Waking up from such a dream doesn't feel like waking up from fantasy. It feels like returning from a visit. But dreams are only one part of this wide spectrum of experiences. Others report hearing a voice as clear as if the person were standing right beside them, a whisper calling their name, a sentence that brings peace in a moment of despair. For some, it's not a voice heard with the ears, but one felt inside the mind, a sudden thought that carries a tone and energy too familiar to be random. Visual glimpses are another common form. People speak of catching sight of a figure at the corner of the room or a fleeting shadow that carries a sense of recognition. A few describe seeing their loved one fully in a radiant form only for them to fade just as quickly. These moments don't linger long, but the memory does. The feeling of "I saw them" remains long after the image has vanished. Symbols also play a powerful role in after-death communication. A favorite song playing unexpectedly at the exact time it's needed most. A bird landing on a windowsill right after a prayer. A light flickering in a quiet room. These symbols may seem ordinary to outsiders, but for the person experiencing them, they carry profound meaning. They are received not as random events, but as personal signs, unique, intimate, and impossible to dismiss. Even modern technology has entered these stories. Some describe phone calls with no one on the other end, radios turning on by themselves, or messages appearing on screens in mysterious ways. While skeptics might shrug at such accounts, for those who experience them, these moments are interpreted as direct communication from beyond. The form doesn't matter as much as the feeling, the unmistakable sense that love has reached across a boundary. No matter the form, dream, voice, vision, symbol, or sign, the emotional impact is often the same. A deep wave of comfort, a sudden lifting of heaviness. People describe feeling less alone, less fearful, and more at peace. Grief, which once felt unbearable, softens in the presence of such experiences. It doesn't erase the pain of loss, but it brings a light that makes the darkness less overwhelming. For someone struggling to accept the death of a loved one, an ADC can be a turning point. A mother grieving her child may find hope in a dream that assures her the child is safe. A spouse mourning a partner might feel their touch in a moment of sorrow and finally breathe easier. These are not just small comforts, they can reshape the entire journey of healing. What's most striking is the acceptance that follows. People often say, I knew then they were okay, or I felt peace. I hadn't felt in months. The communication, whether brief or subtle, acts like a bridge. It reassures the living that their loved ones are not lost, only transformed. This acceptance is not about moving on and forgetting, but about carrying forward with love instead of despair. The healing doesn't stop at grief. For many, these experiences also bring a new outlook on life. Fear of death itself often lessens. Belief in connection, in meaning, in something greater than the physical world begins to grow. And even for those who remain unsure of what they experienced, the emotional effect lingers. The comfort, the calm, the healing that cannot be denied. The variety of after-death communications may differ in form, but the message beneath them is often the same. Love does not simply disappear. It finds ways to reach us. And in that reaching, the broken pieces of the heart begin to mend, little by little, moment by moment, until grief is not just about loss, but also about connection that endures. It often begins in the depths of grief, when loss feels unbearable and the future seems heavy with emptiness. In those moments, an unexpected experience can bring sudden relief. People who sense the presence of a loved one after death often describe feeling lighter, as though a weight has been lifted from their chest. The pain doesn't vanish completely, but it softens. Grief, which once felt endless, begins to move. The heart finds a rhythm again, and healing no longer feels impossible. For many, these experiences mark a turning point in the grieving process. A widow who dreams of her husband smiling at her may wake with a sense of reassurance that he is safe. A parent who feels the embrace of a lost child may find strength to face another day. Instead of being trapped in the cycle of sorrow, people begin to move forward with a renewed sense of connection. The loss is still real, but it no longer feels like an absolute end. Some even describe the relief as immediate. The moment they sense a sign, a presence, or a message, they say the tears come differently, no longer from despair, but from comfort. It is as if the wound of grief has been touched by something soothing, something unexplainable but deeply healing. For people who have struggled with feeling stuck in mourning, these encounters often provide exactly what they need to continue their journey toward acceptance. Beyond emotional relief, there's another layer to these experiences: the spiritual impact. After-death communication has a way of challenging and reshaping what people believe about life, death, and what might exist beyond. Someone who once feared death may begin to see it not as an ending, but as a transition. A person who doubted any form of afterlife may start to wonder with genuine openness whether love and consciousness truly continue. These spiritual shifts are not always tied to a specific religion. They are often deeply personal, shaped by the individual's own heart and perspective. A man who never considered himself spiritual might suddenly feel that there must be more to existence than he thought. A woman who already had faith may find her beliefs strengthened, no longer abstract, but alive with experience. These changes rarely happen overnight, but once someone has felt a presence they cannot explain, the way they see the world is rarely the same. Even those who remain uncertain often carry a gentler outlook. They may not claim to know what happens after death, but they are more open to mystery. They may no longer dismiss the experiences of others as imagination. Instead, they begin to understand that there is comfort and even wisdom in being open-minded. This shift in perspective can create deeper compassion, not only toward themselves, but also toward others navigating grief. For many, the impact reaches far beyond their personal loss. Their approach to life begins to change. With the fear of death lessened, they live with more courage, more gratitude, and more awareness of the present moment. They value relationships more deeply. They cherish love as something that continues, even when the physical presence is gone. In this way, after-death communication does not only ease grief, it shapes a new way of living. These experiences also invite people to explore questions they might have avoided before. What does it mean to remain connected to those who have passed? Can love truly transcend time and space? What is the true nature of human existence? While there may never be final answers, the willingness to ask and explore creates growth. The questions themselves become part of the healing journey. What stands out most is that the shift is rarely about fear. It is about peace. People who once dreaded the thought of death often come to see it with more acceptance. They no longer carry the same weight of dread because they've felt in some mysterious way that life continues. Whether it's a dream, a sign, or a moment of presence, the experience transforms grief into something more bearable. It transforms life into something more meaningful. Through these quiet, often private moments, people find not only relief from pain, but also a new vision of what it means to live, love, and eventually let go. The grief softens, the heart begins to mend, and the spirit learns to see death not as a wall, but as a doorway into something beyond. It does not always take the weight of grief for these experiences to appear. Some people report moments of after-death communication even when they are not mourning or thinking about loss at all. They may be walking in a park, sitting at work, or simply enjoying a quiet evening. And suddenly they feel the unmistakable presence of someone who has long passed. There is no active sadness pulling them into the moment, no conscious memory stirring it. It simply arrives, uninvited yet profound. This challenges the idea that ADCs are only born from grief. If they were merely products of longing or imagination, it would make sense for them to surface only during mourning. But when they appear unexpectedly in the middle of ordinary life, they suggest something broader. They hint at a connection that exists regardless of emotional state. This adds an element of universality. These moments are not limited to those in pain. They can happen to anyone at any time across cultures, beliefs, and circumstances. Stories like these often surprise the people who lived through them. Imagine a man who lost his grandfather years ago, long past the heavy grief. One night, without warning, he dreams of his grandfather handing him advice for a present problem. The man wakes not in sorrow but in awe, carrying wisdom that feels deeply personal. Or picture a woman with no recent loss, walking down a familiar street, when she suddenly smells her late mother's favorite perfume. These events carry meaning because they are not tied to immediate mourning. They arrive as reminders that the bond continues beyond the frame of grief. This universality has caught the attention of professionals who work with people navigating emotional challenges. Therapists and counselors are beginning to notice that dismissing these experiences as mere imagination does more harm than good. When someone feels an ADC and shares it, they are often not asking for proof. They are seeking acknowledgement. They are saying, "This happened to me and it matters." In the past, such stories might have been brushed aside, treated as signs of denial or even delusion. But a shift is happening. Some counselors are now saying, "Let's listen, not dismiss." Instead of focusing on whether the experience can be proven, they look at what it brings to the person emotionally. Did it ease their pain? Did it give them courage? Did it help them find peace? By paying attention to these questions, therapy becomes a safe place where ADCs can be explored without fear of judgment. This change is important because silence often deepens suffering. When people keep their experiences hidden, They lose the chance to process them. They carry both grief and secrecy, adding another layer of isolation. But when they are given space to talk openly, they often describe a release. They no longer feel strange or alone. They discover that others have walked the same path, that their story is part of something larger. Therapists are also learning that these experiences can be integrated into healing practices. For example, guided imagery or meditation may encourage people to feel safe enough to explore their own memories and connections. While not all professionals agree on the methods, the willingness to honor these moments is growing. The focus is less on proving or disproving and more on supporting the person's journey of healing. Even those who remain skeptical find value in this approach. They see that dismissing ADCs risks invalidating a deeply personal moment. By listening instead, counselors help people use the comfort and meaning from these experiences as tools for recovery. It is not about convincing anyone of what is real. It is about recognizing that what feels real can bring real healing. This perspective shifts the way we think about human connection. ADCs are not just a response to sorrow. They are part of a wider fabric of life, moments that remind us of bonds that endure beyond time and space. And when these moments are respected rather than rejected, they open doors not only to emotional relief, but also to deeper understanding of ourselves and the mysteries we live with every day. It often surprises people to learn just how many remain silent about their experiences. A person might have a vivid dream that feels like a real visit, or they might hear a voice that brings peace in the middle of the night. Yet when morning comes, they keep it to themselves. The reason is simple: fear of judgment. Society is quick to dismiss anything it cannot measure, and so many people swallow their stories to avoid being seen as unusual. The silence is not born from lack of meaning. On the contrary, these experiences often carry enormous emotional weight. But speaking them aloud risks labels, strange, delusional, or imagining things. Nobody wants to be laughed at or treated as though grief has clouded their mind. So people tuck these stories away, telling no one but perhaps a close friend or keeping them locked deep inside. They carry both the wonder of the moment and the loneliness of silence. This quiet is common, even in families. A woman may sense her late husband sitting beside her at night, but when she tries to share it, she worries her children will think she has lost touch with reality. A man may feel the presence of his grandmother while praying, but he hesitates to tell his colleagues for fear they will roll their eyes. These inner battles show how powerful social judgment can be. The experience itself feels real, but the fear of disbelief keeps it hidden. And yet, silence does not erase truth. Across cultures and generations, countless people have carried these stories quietly, and only when trust is built do they dare to speak them. What is striking is how often, once shared, someone else responds with their own hidden story. The moment one voice opens, others follow, revealing that the silence has always been shared, even if no one knew it. In response to this unspoken need, new ways of exploring these experiences are emerging. Gentle, thoughtful methods are being developed, not to sensationalize, but to support. Practices such as meditation, mindfulness, and guided imagery are being used to create safe spaces where people can connect with their memories and emotions. These approaches do not promise proof, but they do invite comfort. They give people permission to explore the presence they feel without fear of being judged. Some therapists are introducing guided techniques that allow individuals to relax deeply, enter a calm state, and see what arises naturally. For some, this might lead to a symbolic vision or the sense of a loved one close by. For others, it may simply bring peace and clarity. The point is not to force an encounter, but to offer a safe path for healing. These methods treat the experiences not as something to be dismissed, but as part of the human process of grieving, loving, and remembering. The gentle nature of these practices matters. They are not about proving whether the experience comes from the outside world or the inner mind. They are about creating space where healing can occur. A person who feels comforted by a symbolic dream, a calming vision, or a guiding memory is not asked to defend its reality. Instead, they are encouraged to receive the meaning it brings. This acceptance itself becomes healing. For many, simply knowing that professionals are open to listening makes a difference. It tells them they are not strange, not alone, not broken. It tells them their experience is part of a wider human story, one that deserves respect rather than ridicule. This small shift from dismissal to gentle exploration allows people to step out of silence. They begin to realize their voice matters, their story matters, and their healing matters. In this way, the world of after-death communication moves from hidden whispers to shared understanding. People are no longer trapped by fear of judgment, but invited into spaces where compassion outweighs disbelief. And in those spaces, the silence finally begins to break, replaced by the freedom to honor what the heart has felt all along. It is easy to imagine that these experiences belong to only a few people in certain places. But the truth is far larger. After-death communications are not bound by culture, language, or belief system. They appear in villages, cities, and communities across the world. They surface in stories told by people who have never met each other, never shared traditions, and never read the same books. What emerges is a clear truth. ADCs are not strange outliers. They are part of the shared human experience. In Asia, families often speak of dreams where ancestors return with advice or blessings. These dreams are not dismissed but embraced as important, sometimes even guiding decisions for the family. In parts of Africa, stories of sensing the presence of elders are woven into daily life, treated as natural signs of respect and continuity. Among indigenous peoples of the Americas, communication with ancestors is often understood as part of the circle of life, a reminder that the past and present are never truly separate. In Europe and North America, people tell remarkably similar stories, though often in quieter tones. A man might wake with the memory of his mother visiting him in a dream, smiling and reassuring him. A woman might suddenly smell her father's pipe smoke years after his passing. While some may hesitate to admit it publicly, the accounts mirror those told across oceans and continents. Different cultures may interpret them through different lenses, but the essence is the same, a deep sense that love and connection outlast physical death. What is striking is the consistency of the experiences themselves. Whether the story comes from a rural village in India, a bustling city in Brazil, or a quiet town in Europe, the themes echo dreams that feel more real than imagination. Voices that arrive in moments of need, symbols that carry personal meaning, and presences that bring comfort instead of fear. These similarities show that ADCs are not products of one belief system. They belong to the broader fabric of human life. The way these experiences are spoken about may differ. In some places, they are seen as sacred and shared openly. In others, they are kept private, whispered only to trusted loved ones. But the silence or openness does not change the reality that they occur. The fact that so many cultures describe them suggests something more universal at play, something that transcends geography and tradition. Even in cultures that emphasize science and rationality, people still tell these stories. They may use different language, calling them strange coincidences or odd experiences, but the feeling underneath remains the same: a sense of contact, a moment of peace, a connection that feels undeniable. The labels may change, but the essence is shared. This cross-cultural insight reminds us to see ADCs not as strange or unusual, but as human. They reveal a side of existence that unites us rather than separates us. The experiences show that at the heart of humanity is the same longing, the same love, the same desire to stay connected even after death has taken someone away. They remind us that while cultures create different rituals around loss, the feeling of connection that lingers is something we all know. When we step back and see the bigger picture, the universality becomes impossible to ignore. Billions of people across time and space have carried these stories, finding comfort, healing, or guidance in them. They may not always speak the same words, but the language of the heart is universal. It tells us that love does not stop at borders, traditions, or even at death itself. So when someone shares an after-death communication, it is not a tale of isolation. It is not something weird or outside the human story. It is a reminder that across the world, across cultures, and across generations, people have felt the same mystery, the same comfort, and the same bond that goes beyond life. And that makes these experiences not unusual, but profoundly human. These experiences are more than stories. They're shared human expressions that cross cultures, beliefs, and generations. Whether you personally believe in them or not, they matter deeply to those who live through them. They bring comfort, healing, and meaning in ways that cannot be measured but can always be felt. So the best response is curiosity instead of judgment, compassion instead of dismissal. Stay open, be kind, and let's continue exploring the mysteries of connection, because what feels real to someone deserves respect. If this message touched you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more thoughtful exploration.